So let's talk about pathological liars. Uh, I need to start out by saying that this is about someone who has experienced pathological liars and has been abused by pathological liars. This is from the perspective of that. This is not about being a pathological liar. So if you're looking for help, if you are a pathological liar, you're not going to get it here. I don't know what to do with you. I am helping out people who have to deal with pathological liars because that's what I have experience with. So, just making that there in the preface. So, pathological liars. What is a pathological liar? Well, let's ask WebMD, like any good person on the internet, what to know about pathological liars. People sometimes call someone who lies a lot a pathological liar. Frequent dishonesty isn't a good habit, but it doesn't fit the official definition of pathological lying. To be labeled as a pathological liar, a person must lie frequently and for no good reason. Pathological liars harm themselves with their behavior, but they keep doing it despite the consequences. Psychiatrists have recognized pathological lying as a type of behavior for hundreds of years. It's called pseudologia fantastica or mythomania. It isn't listed as official diagnosis in the DSM or DSM-5, but it is a real and troubling condition. So let's see. Pathological liars often lie without any reason. Their lies are extensive and elaborate. The urge to lie is compulsive. They often can't control the impulse to make up stories even when this causes them harm. They may lose jobs and ruin relationships because of their lying. It isn't clear whether pathological liars understand that what they say isn't true. Some people fully believe in the things they say even when they are clearly false. Other pathological liars will admit they have been lying only when their lies are proved false. Pathological lying usually starts when a person is in their teens. They continue the pattern for years. Their lying might become a problem that affects their relationships, career, and family. So I want to talk about this because my mother does this quite a lot, and the way that she does it is, I think, very illuminating for anyone who has dealt with pathological liars and wants to understand a little bit more of what's going on and kind of how they act. One of the things that's been really difficult for me is that my mother has been lying to me since I was born. So this meant that I was very ill prepared for being lied to by other people that I met as I grew up. She never actually helped me figure out how to tell the difference between people who were lying and people who were telling the truth, because she didn't want me to know that difference, because that would mean that I would actually be able to see when it was that she was lying. And as it is for what was she lying about, well, basically anything that she wanted. I don't know whether or not this was all something that she did on purpose. I think that's why it's the definition for compulsive liar really helps. There's some times where I really don't know why she lied about something or what possible advantage it could have gained her. For instance, one time she lied to me about some stuff that happened in her childhood in a way that would make me think more highly of her, because I would think that it was a neat story and that she was really cool. So in that instance, I understand why she would lie to me. But there's other times where she's lied to me, and I really just don't know why. It really just seemed like she did it because she could, and kind of to prove that she could. And I think that's one of the things about pathological liars is I find if they have a position of authority in a relationship or a position of power in a relationship, then the lying tends to abuse the power, or the lying tends to help them abuse power by asserting more power. In my case, it was very difficult for me to ever call her out on anything, because she would basically just move around the facts to suit herself. And there were times where it was clear to me that's what she had done. And if I tried to do the same thing for my advantage, of course, I would just be called out on it as a liar. But I couldn't do the same with her. And then there were just many times where I did not understand that she was lying. And there were many times that she either lied for expediency or just for no reason at all. I would remember what it was that she said when she lied. And then later on, I, remembering that lie, would retain the information and make a decision, or even like a purchase, like a gift or something based on it, and she would be confused as to why I made that decision, or angry. And part of it was because it seems like whenever she would lie, she wouldn't really remember what she lied about because she didn't really care too much about the lie. She felt that whatever she was lying about at the time was of no real consequence. So, it's a little white lie. So it doesn't really matter if she remembers it or not, since it's a lie that doesn't really matter. But myself, I'm a very logic based person, and I do a lot of deductive logic, which means collecting a lot of information, and I remember all that information. I keep track of it. And quite honestly, there's so much stuff that I remember her saying that I now cannot tell if it was true or not, because she's changed her story so often on some things. And that's, I think, really where the ruining relationships comes into play. I can't talk to this person anymore because I cannot evaluate whether she knows that she is telling the truth or not. And she seems to use this ability to lie off the cuff for her own advantage. She does seem to knowingly use it sometimes. And she does kind of keep track of her lies sometimes. So that means that she knows how to do this just enough to be dangerous. But she's not keeping enough track of it to actually, I don't want to say use it well, but since she's not keeping track of it, it's getting her into trouble, and whenever it gets her into trouble, she tries to blame it on other people. So like it's really just a jumbled up mess. This is my experience just with her. I have experienced many other pathological liars, and only recently have I realized that that's what all those people had in common. Like I went through a certain period where I was doing a lot of research on narcissists. I was doing research on sociopaths, not just mental illness based, but just like, some of it was research on abusers. I've read Why Does He Do That? And really, what I was looking for was, why do people lie? And why do people lie like that? Why do they treat this information like it isn't important, and they can just make everything up and it'll be fine whenever they do? Because that doesn't make sense according to the reality that I've experienced. I really think that it's a bad era for pathological liars. I think that what's unfortunate for my mom is that I'm pretty sure she learned this from someone else in our family. And I'm pretty sure that the person she learned it from is the man in our family who has a lot of very impressive stories about himself that she really, really respects. And maybe she put together at one point that not all his stories are true. Maybe she put together at one point that if he has such cool stories, then maybe she should tell cool stories about herself. Or maybe she needs to have cooler stories than he has, or maybe she needs to have at least as cool stories as he has. But it's very obvious that her and many people in my family are competing with her father for basically attention, because he's an Air Force legend. Not that anybody would know who he is if you just they were in the Air Force and I talked to them off the cuff. It's just he's got a history in the Air Force, and it's enough of a prestigious history that no one else in the family can really beat him. And I kind of wonder sometimes if that prestigious history really exists. I know he was actually in the Air Force. I know that he did the things technically that he said he did. But there's stories that I've heard about how he was basically the Poe Dameron of his time. About how he was kind of sent around world to do diplomacy type stuff during a certain period, and I just have my doubts. Um, I have my doubts after examining my family's behavior all this time, and I have my doubts after just examining the behavior of the woman that he raised. But that even if he is telling the truth, that pressure has been there all my mom and her siblings' lives. And it just really seems like all of them needed to one up someone. And that need to one up someone, to have the ability to do that just right there. The only way that you can really do that is to lie off the cuff, it seems, according to them at least. And it's really sad because there's been times that my mom has tried to impress me by lying to me. And it really seems like she just didn't think anything of it like that. It's hard to tell just how stupid she thinks I am. I'm just going to say it like that. She's always said that she thinks that I'm very smart. I went to gifted classes. I went to a school for the gifted. So like, there's no faking that one out. But like, she she acts like I'll just believe anything she says. And the times I've questioned her, she acts so condescending and has this really weird voice and this really weird facial expression, and it's just very uncomfortable to deal with. And it's so difficult because I've always felt like I just can't be honest with her. Like this idea that she can't be honest with me has kind of reflected, and I just like have always felt like I can't really tell her the truth either. Like there's been times where I've been afraid to tell her that I'm not hetero, that I'm not cis. I've told her both things, and she reacted pretty poorly both, to be quite honest. Um, so it's really difficult. I came out to her. I told her my truth, and all she's really told me is her lies. There's times that I just really don't know what to do with that, and I certainly don't know how to talk to her anymore. I don't know how to communicate with her. There's just been times that I've tried to send her art, that I've tried to express myself in any number of ways, and she's never really understood that I am trying to send her a message. And she has never really understood that some of the message is going to be that like I care about her and I don't understand why she acts like this. So because she's prepared me so poorly for being able to tell that people are liars, I have had a lot of people in my life that I care about who were just lying to me the whole time. And it was really hard for me to tell because on a certain level, I think that once I figured out that they were liars, I was eventually going to figure out that mom was a liar. And so I think there was just a certain part of me that didn't want me to figure out that this was lying behavior, that this meant that these people were liars, because that part of me knew that eventually I would figure out that mom's a liar, and that a lot of what she's told me means nothing. And that really sucks because I mean some of it's stuff that I've repeated to other people. So I've I've passed on a few of her lies not knowing it. There's been times that I've told relatives stuff she said, and I've been corrected on things, and I've told her like, hey, they said actually this happened, and she argued with me over it. And um she could have just said she made a mistake, but instead she always doubles down. That's really the hardest part. She keeps on trying to add more sauce on top. Um, keeps on trying to one up. It's very tiring being with her because she seems to have this to feel this need to really impress people with what she says instead of just saying what it is that she actually feels or means. And that means that like for her entire life she basically had me convinced that she was a liberal, but she's actually a Republican. Um, she basically lied to me about her politics all her life, and the reason she did that is because she wanted me to think more highly of her. Um, And if I would have known from the start which party she was in, then like I would have had different political discussions with her. I don't think that I would have thought more or less highly of her, because there's some Democrats that I really don't think a whole lot of. But the fact that she acted like she was in a different political party around me, that she gave me cover stories for why she was watching Fox News, she basically made up stories about other relatives who were really racist so that I would like think differently about them. Um, she's she once told me that she led a letter writing like petition with all of the her classmates in her school about the drinking water at her school, and that it got all the way to the EPA. And the way she told it just sounded like an ABC Saturday afternoon special for the kids. Like she was leading the whole pack and they were all marching behind her, and they all went to the principal and they all did it in an orderly way that they were supposed to. So he appreciated it, and he sent a letter to all the parents saying so or something like that, and he forwarded a letter to the senator, and the senator sent it to Congress, and eventually they looked over it whenever they were doing the EPA stuff, and it's all BS. It's all total BS. She never did that. She just wanted me to think that she did. And she'd had a lot of wine that night. And it's sad. It's sad about her. As for our relationship, the thing is, I've always been wondering what the hell's wrong with it. So, like, I'm less sad about that than I expect. I've spent my whole life wondering what's wrong with my relationship with my mom. And what's wrong with my relationship with my mom is that I don't know anything about her. She keeps lying to me about herself. That's it. It's pretty simple. I don't really know what to do with all the information I have in my head from her, because I know some of it's not true. I'm not the I know I'm not the first person to ever have to deal with this. Actually, one of my aunts who married into the family, she had her father and her brother were both pathological liars. Whenever she, like they basically just told her all kinds of different stories whenever she was a kid, just to see what she would believe, and then they'd see if she would repeat it, and then they either they'd tell her that it was a story, or they would not tell her, and they'd just wait for like one of her friends to be like, "That's not true. That's like told her that um Lake Pontchartrain was man-made, and I don't know if you know how big Lake Pontchartrain is, but it's not man-made." Um, and she believed that into adulthood. They never told her. They never told her that it wasn't man-made. They made up this whole story about how there was like some kind of public works project to make Lake Pontchartrain like artificially, and it just was, none of it was true at all, and they told her this for no reason. And so she's had to deal with that kind of information control, information just mess in her head. And like honestly, she seems to handle it really well. She's a very positive person and very forgiving, and I'm really impressed with that. Actually, understanding that she went through that was what helped me understand what was going on between myself and my mother. It's really been unfortunate to understand just how many people in my life have lied to me. Um, I wish I had known earlier is pretty much where I am, just because it would have meant that I'd invested less time in these people. Um, I've already kind of moved on past the whole idea of having parents, as it were. Um, it, it, this whole all this stuff has been running for a long time. She hasn't been very supportive my whole life, so this isn't like a huge revelation. It's just it sometimes can be very destabilizing to realize that no one ever really taught me how to tell whether people were telling the truth. I just figured it out, and sometimes I didn't figure it out all the way. It's really frustrating not to have had the support of my parents throughout my childhood for figuring out why people acted the way that they did and how to deal with it when they were acting strangely. Anytime that I would bring it up, anytime I would show my confusion, they would just argue with me or tell me that I was being overly sensitive. And I think that just really shows that they weren't real parents. So, um, I know a lot of this has been about my childhood, and a lot of this has been about my relationship with my mom more than it's been about pathological lying. Call this like one person's testimony when it comes to what it's like to have lived with a pathological liar, a pathological lying mother. Um, I feel less anger, emotions, less. I don't really feel a lot of strong emotions about her and about this anymore. The biggest confusion, or the biggest emotion for me all my life about her was confusion. Why is it like this? With that resolved, there's not really a lot to be angry about because it turns out there was nothing there to begin with. It was all just a lie. And it's sort of like feeling like a whole bunch of space in my head that was all cluttered up by something I didn't understand is just completely empty all of a sudden, and I can do anything with it that I want. Write my own story instead of trying to remember some BS that somebody made up. So that's been my experience being pathologically lied to. Um, I'm not going to really leave you with any recommendations because I'm still trying to kind of recover from this and understand it myself. But if you've noticed a kind of change in my approach to occultism and approach to teaching and approach to just basically my entire life, a large part of it is due to this. There's just like a part of me that wants to be very clear about what it is I think is true and why it is that I'm telling anybody anything. And I think it's because after being lied to like this, I really think it's important to pass on something to people that's real instead of just trying to pass off something that's fake as something that's worth passing on. So I hope all of you find somebody who tells you the truth. See you later.